Hello everyone. Today we are talking Scottish memories with television presenter Ross King. So you guys have been listening to me talking about Edinburgh and Scotland now for a while, but I thought it might be interesting for you if we maybe started to hear from other people. So I've been reaching out to various Scottish personalities, both domestically and internationally, to see if they wouldn't mind sparing 5-10 minutes to come on and chat about their memories, where they like to go, where they recommend if you were ever thinking of coming to visit Scotland. So our first guest is Glasgow-born Ross King, television presenter and actor who is now over in LA. Let me welcome you for the very first time on Scottish Memories, Mr. Ross King. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Tony. I feel very, very honoured to be guest number one. First time I've been number one at anything.
Thank you so much for doing this. It means so much for you to come on and just share your memories and hints and tips about, visiting Edinburgh and Scotland and everything like that. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Oh, it's lovely, especially to talk about Edinburgh, just one of my favourite places in the world, never mind in Scotland. So
for a Glasgow-born lad, I'm surprised.
And it's such a funny thing that moving to Los Angeles, and Los Angeles and New York have a bit of a rivalry as well, which I always think is really strange because, two brilliant places, both quite different. But it's funny that this rivalry exists, and it is the same, between Edinburgh and Glasgow. And it's what I think is even funnier, especially when you hear it in the States, when you're telling people about Edinburgh and Glasgow, and people are coming over for the first time, and they're like, "Ross, so do we get a plane from Glasgow to Edinburgh or Edinburgh to Glasgow?" And you go, "No, it's like 40 minutes in the car or 35 minutes in the train." And they're like, "So you're right beside each other?" And it's so funny when you think about it. Even as a kid, if I went to Edinburgh with mum and dad and my sister, it was a day trip. You'd leave early in the morning. And I remember one time having a meeting in Edinburgh in the afternoon, and people were like, "So did you stay overnight?" I know, I just got the train through at lunchtime and came back in the afternoon. It's funny, isn't it?
All the time. I used to have to go through to Glasgow for various things. Just jump in the car, go through, do it, and jump back. It only take me like 2-3 hours, and I'm done.
Yeah.
So you're obviously Glasgow on origin. So how was the move over LA? What do you miss Edinburgh? Do you miss being over here? Do you get back a lot?
Oh yeah, I try and get back as much as I can. I try and get back 4 or 5 times. Obviously, with everything that's going on in the world at the moment, that's not possible. But I would even come back. I mean, I was lucky enough years and years ago to do pantomime at the King's Theatre, and then also lucky enough to do the musical Summer Holiday at the Playhouse. So I've performed in a couple of the theatres there. I go back and see my old mate Alan Stewart, who still does the panto every year at the King's Theatre.
Panto legend at the Edinburgh King's Theatre.
So it's great, coming back, and then I try and make sure that I have a couple of days, and I come back occasionally. I do some gigs, so a couple of charity events I've done in Edinburgh as well. So I love coming back, and I really genuinely do love Edinburgh, and I love fond memories of everything from the Commonwealth Games swimming pool. That was a big thing for his kids to travel through, to go to that. To go to Edinburgh Zoo was a huge part as well, and that was even before the pandas. I mean, this is pre-pandas.
Pre-pandas, yeah.
And I always did want to come and see the pandas, but I was always so disappointed going to any zoo and seeing giant pandas and discovering that giant pandas aren't really giant.
No,
they're still small.
Small, aren't they? It's like when you see them on a tin, it's like actual size.
Yeah. I say, it's like when I used to have my photograph in the theatre programs, I used to get a little bit beside it saying actual size.
So you actually started to mention it just when we started chatting there, but you said, you used to have day trips over to Edinburgh, and I'm guessing other parts of Scotland when you were a kid. So what sort of places did you go? Obviously you mentioned Edinburgh Zoo, but
yeah. Well, also as a family, when we would go on holiday, I mean, I didn't get on a plane properly till I would be not plane properly, just a plane,
Right.
till I was probably 16, 17, and started working at Radio Clyde in Glasgow. We didn't have any holidays abroad. All our holidays were either in Scotland, so it would be St Andrews,
Yeah.
it would be Nairn, which was another great place. We'd go up the islands, Ullapool, Skye. We did all that. Sana was another great place that I remember going to. And in fact, going to Nairn, the weirdest and most wonderful memory as a child going to Nairn, we were told that Sir Charlie Chaplin used to go to Nairn because he loved golf, and he still went there. I was about 5, something like that. And we were in the town one day, and this huge, big, black, like Rolls Royce Daimler type limo went past, and people went, "Oh, that's Charlie Chaplin." And it was like, wow. And, so I felt very honored that I'd seen Charlie Chaplin's car go past with him in it. And then about, I think it was 3 or 4 days later, my mum, my dad, my Aunt Betty, we were walking along the coast, just along by the beach. And it was that beautiful dusk, like that wonderful dusk that you get in Scotland that you don't seem to get anywhere else. And as we were walking along, my mum said, "It's Charlie Chaplin." And I looked up, and I just remember thinking, well, where's the man with the bowler hat and the little moustache? And I remember it was this, obviously he was an old man by that time, wearing this big, heavy coat and a hat, like a Homburg hat. And they took me up to him and said, "Hello, Mr. Chaplin, and this is my son." And I shook hands with Charlie Chaplin, which I still remember to this day. And then the weirdest thing was that I remember as I got older and started collecting memorabilia, I thought it would have been lovely to have had Charlie's autograph. And Mum said, "Aunt Betty's got it in the sideboard drawer in pencil when he'd appeared." I think it was at the Empire, one of the theatres in Glasgow. And sure enough, Aunt Betty went to the sideboard drawer, where everything was kept. And there it was. So I have it, and I have it framed. And so it's an amazing memory. So whenever I look at that, I think of Nairn.
That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. It's funny, Scotland does have a lot of, I tend to find that a lot, or hear about, I should say, that a lot of celebrities tend to have a big love of Scotland and visiting and things. I remember hearing a story of Laurel and Hardy went to the old Empire, which is now the Festival Theatre, and they also went to the Edinburgh Playhouse. They had 2 visits.
Yeah.
And the Edinburgh Playhouse still has some incredible footage of when they were there and they're on the stage and things. But one of the stories that I heard was, obviously the crowds were huge when they came. I mean, they were the biggest stars in the world. And obviously, you'll know the top of Leith Walk and going along York Place and things. Apparently, the crowds were so big that they let them go onto the roof so that everyone could see them, and to show that there was no health and safety, because afterwards they were going up to St Andrews to play golf. They let them hit golf balls off the roof onto Paulton Hill. This is going back, like, I don't know how many, like 80 odd years or so ago, but it just shows how times have changed there as well.
Just a lot. I know. I would have thought, hell, the Playhouse Theatre, as I said, that I was lucky enough to play with the musical Summer Holiday. I always think health and safety. Who would ever allow you that to get to the dressing rooms, to go down that hill and then come up after a show after you've given it your all, trying to get to the top of that hill? Thankfully, there's that little bar at the top, so that suddenly made it all worthwhile.
It's a unique design, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like the old saying of, you're going somewhere in Edinburgh, you go uphill. You're going home again, you still go uphill. I don't know how.
How does that work? Yeah.
So I was going to mention, because you touched on it already, how you played the Kings at Panto, but you also did the 100-year anniversary of the Kings with Alan Stewart and Grant Stott and Andy Gray. Did that all come about because you played the Kings, or did you particularly have a love of that theatre?
Well, my involvement in that show was just by video, but yeah, it was great. It was great to be involved in it, and I'd also performed. Alan had the big variety show that he does every year, and I did one of the very first ones of those. And again, it's a love of theatre, and again, a love of Edinburgh. And every time, I would go to Edinburgh. The one thing that I would recommend to anyone, and I say this, no matter where you go in the world. And at first I used to kind of poo-poo the idea, especially in places that I'd lived, like London or Glasgow or Edinburgh, is to do the bus tour, to do the double-decker bus tour if it's there, because you see so much in such a short space of time. And I've been lucky to have lived in great places, Stratford and Avon, obviously Glasgow. I always remember, and this is such typical Glasgow humour, I got on the bus, and it was quite cold. It was in the winter, but I was determined that I was going to do the bus tour and see bits that I maybe didn't know and hear stories that I didn't know. And in fact, I'll come back to one of the stories which I never had an idea of why it was called that. In fact, I'll tell you very quickly now. The Gorbals, one of the most infamous places in Glasgow. And the reason that it's called, I don't know if you know, do you know why it's called Gorbals?
I don't actually, no.
So back in the days during leprosy, that's where they put all the lepers out in that area. And so when they let people in the centre of Glasgow know that the lepers were allowed in once a week, they'd ring this bell, which then became known as the Gory Bell, to let people know they were coming in from that side. And the Gory Bell got shortened and became Gorbals. Anyway, so I got on this bus tour with my sister, her husband, my niece, and my nephew. And as we got on, the bus driver went, "Oh, Ross, the boss, how you doing there?" He says, "What are you doing this for?" And I said, "Well, it's my hometown, and there might be things that I don't know about." And he says, "Oh," he says, I think you'll love it." He says, we talk about Glasgow, we talk about all the different places, we show you places, we talk about loads of famous people. You're no one of them."
You could sum up Glasgow humour any better than that, really.
That was it. So doing the bus tour, and again, doing the bus tour in Edinburgh was always just brilliant. And I think I've done it certainly at least twice, possibly 3 times. And then you discover that square, and then this is where chloroform was used, and it was chloroform at parties. I mean, I never quite understood that one. And correct me if I'm wrong, because you know your history there so well. But there was this thing where it would, like, the gentlemen and the women, they'd have dinner, then the women would go to another room, and the men would go to another room and take chloroform. Yeah. I'm not. So what? You just took it and then out you went, and that was it.
Sat there and just in your own little zone for a little while. Yeah, it's an odd thing to do, really, isn't it?
And again, those things of Edinburgh that I remember as a kid, the camera obscura was a big thing. I
think the camera obscura is massively underrated. It's so much fun. It really is. It really is.
Loved it. Walter Scott Monument. I've got my certificate for walking up that, so I remember that. And obviously,
they don't give certificates anymore. You got a certificate for it.
No, I've got a certificate. I did get a certificate. Yeah, for all I can't remember actually with all these Zoom quizzes at the moment. That should be one of the questions. How many steps? Because I think in the Eiffel Tower it's something like 1,720 steps. It's a question that keeps coming up. Yeah. So there should be one about Walter Scott's Monument. So
obviously you've been up the Scott's Monument and you'll know, but it's funny, those steps, it's one of those things where it starts out and it's very comfortable.
Yes.
And the higher you get up, the more tight it is. I remember the last time I did it, you're kind of having to shout up to sort of see if someone's coming down.
That's right, yeah.
Then, otherwise, it gets very intimate as you're crossing people in the stairs.
Yeah, exactly. You have an affair, even if you don't plan to or not. So, that for me was just wonderful. And then also, I think it was the time, I was obviously doing a show, and then we did the Ghost Tour, which was great as well. But then we did this thing, and you can correct me, because this was, I don't know, maybe it is a tourist attraction now, but I remember going to, I think it was the City Chambers, and I felt very privileged. We went to this room, like this office, and they pulled a filing cabinet back and opened this door. And I went through the door, and it was like something out of Harry Potter. And when I take friends to Edinburgh, you completely see why J.K. Rowling was inspired by everything around there. But I went down these stairs, and I was down in an area which was like, it was like where and again, correct me if I'm wrong, it was when it was the old town and the new town, and they basically just bricked part of it off so that anyone that had the plague couldn't come into the other part. And this was still some of the old, like, shop fronts and house, it seemed like houses. My memory's a little vague on it, but I just remember it being weird.
It's still there. It's Mary King's Close now, and it's you're right, City Chambers, and it's now an official tourist attraction. And I think probably when you did it, and I did it something very similar before it became a tourist attraction. It was something you were lucky if you managed to book in advance because they didn't open it a lot. And when I did it, and I'm sure it's probably the same with you, it wasn't like a tour guide all dressed up fancy. It was just a little old guy that took us down. There was torches and people saying, right, watch your step here. And now it's all lit up and it looks lovely.
Wow.
Yeah, it's still there and it's incredibly popular. It really is one of the best unique ways to see Old Edinburgh.
Yeah. So, and again, that's the thing with Edinburgh. There's so much to see.
Whilst we're kind of on that, when you've got friends coming over and visiting, or you know people that's coming over, is that the kind of place you tell them to go? Or have you got any specific hints or tips for people when they come over to?
No, I mean, again, it's the places that I know and the places that I love. As a kid growing up in Glasgow, Charles Rennie Mackintosh was my hero when it came to design. So, and whenever I would go back to Glasgow, I would always take time and go to, the Glasgow School of Art, which obviously sadly has been so ravaged by fire. But that was always a stop for me, just even if it was just to walk by, because my dentist is in Glasgow still, despite all the years of living in LA.
That's quite a way for a checkup, really, isn't it?
See, people go, really? To go and get your Wally seen to all the way back in Glasgow. But yes, so I go, and so my dentist there, she's not too far from the School of Art. So I would even just take a little wander around. So, and again, it's that simple thing as well in towns, and especially in Edinburgh. So, you look up and you see the architecture. It's just, phenomenal.
I mean, we are very lucky. I think the one thing that I tend to find when people are coming is, obviously, a lot of the people that visit, and a lot of people that get in contact with the channel, they're either expats who have maybe left when they were young and have never been back, or people with relatives who emigrated and they've never been, but they know their ancestry is from here, and or just people who are interested to come and visit, and they're always trying to get in touch. And I don't think they ever understand that when I'm explaining how big Edinburgh is compared to any other city.
Yeah.
Actually, people that are always asking, what sort of, how much time do I need? I'm saying, well, you're fine.
Yes.
give it 10 minutes to get from there to there, then you're good. Off you go. It really is so much history and so much to see in such a compact space, really.
Here's one really silly thing, and it sounds ridiculous, daft boy from Glasgow from a council house, but my tailor is actually in Edinburgh. A guy called Andrew Brooks, who's just the most wonderful character on George Street. And so again, there's just something magical for me about George Street. Again, when I used to go as a kid, when you used to be able to get a parking space.
Well, they're talking about pedestrianising it all now, so...
Well, see, that I could understand that. That would be actually, I'm sure a lot of locals would hate it, but I would love it because it's such a beautiful street. And I just love that fact that you're coming up from, Princess Street and walking up, and then you've got your lanes and all the rest of it and little alleys. And then
there's a lot of plans now to pedestrianise and bike lane a lot of areas now.
Yeah.
Definitely starting to head that way in the city.
Yeah, no. So I again, just so many happy memories of it, and can't wait to get back.
Well, next time you're here, I'll take you out for a pint.
Thank you. I'll take you up with that.
Just before I let you go, I've got 4 very quick, quick questions. Shortbread or tablet?
Oh
yeah.
No, that's a tough one.
It is, isn't it?
It's a great question though. If I'm having a cup of tea, definitely shortbread. And also because Walker's shortbread, as in Nicky Walker, is an old pal from football days. People might not even know that Nicky Walker of the legendary Walkers was goalkeeper at my old team, Partick Thistle. He was also goalkeeper at Rangers, and I took a penalty against him once. And he saved it. So Nicky and his wife, Natalie, are a lovely couple. So I love my Walker's shortbread. I do love tablet. I love homemade tablet. And I like it a little milky, the milkier one rather than the dark one.
Yeah.
And I'm really lucky out here in LA. We have we don't call it a Burns supper. We call it a Burns bash because it's a kind of truncated version. I've always said it's the one that Rabbi himself would have loved to have been at. It's a bit more of a roast. We still do, the poems and the songs. And last year we had Lulu singing, but it was funny with Lulu just trying to explain to people, because we put tablet on the tables, and you can imagine the Americans just having that. It's trying to explain that it's like legal crack.
I used to host a Scottish show for Edinburgh, visitors to Edinburgh from America. It was a lot of Americans, Canadians, and Chinese that used to come. And we used to give them just a starter of haggis, neeps, and tatties. And then they could get their own dinner, because a lot of them were scared to try it.
Yeah.
And they used to ask what was in haggis. I'd always try to water it down a little bit to get them to try it. So I'm sure it was the same trying to describe tablet to them as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, actually, when we're on the subject of tablet, it is funny trying to decide, because my wife is pregnant right now. She's 5 months.
Oh, congratulations.
Right now. Thank you. And we were having this conversation today, actually. Both my gran and her gran used to make homemade shortbread, homemade tablet. That seems very traditional, but neither of our mums make shortbread or tablet. So we've sent them both a message today saying, you've got 4 months, learn.
Love it.
That's a big memory for me, going around to my gran's and getting shortbread and tablet.
Oh, absolutely.
Second question, iron brew or whiskey?
Oh, whiskey.
Yeah, that's good.
I do like iron brew, but no, whiskey. And it's funny that being a Scotsman, and people here think, oh, you've been into whiskey your whole life. And it's only, I would say, in the past 10 years that I actually have liked whiskey. And I think it's because, it was, as a kid growing up in Glasgow, whiskey was like a hard drink, and it had those connotations, and the smell of whiskey I didn't like. And the weirdest thing was that the reason that I actually had my first whiskey was the smell of it. And that's the weirdest thing, that I was hosting an event in New York, a Scottish event, and it thankfully had gone well. And a couple of the guys that were there from Macallan, and they said, hey, Ross, we're going to get you a 25-year-old. And I was like, whoa, hello. And next minute he handed me this glass. And I was thinking, I don't drink whiskey. And I was feeling really bad. And I thought, who could I? And I was trying to find people, and people know we don't drink whiskey and all the rest of it. And then I took a smell of it, and I thought, this doesn't smell like, I know I was brought in at a very high level whiskey-wise. People are going, what? And I thought, this doesn't smell like the whiskies that I grew up in Glasgow around. Yeah. And I was like, wow, and this and that. And then eventually I just started taking a little sip. And then I was like, so I love my single malts. So
here's something that you might find interesting then. Just recently, the first whiskey distillery is now opened up in Edinburgh for almost 100 years. Holyrood Distillery is a new gin and whiskey distillery that just opened up last year. So obviously it takes 3 years for a whiskey to mature. So they're making gin now, and in about 2 years, hopefully they'll have the first whiskey made in Edinburgh for over 100 years. So that's quite exciting.
That is brilliant. It's funny because you were saying Holyrood. I was lucky to go there 2 years ago to get an MBE from the Queen, and I couldn't believe just the gin at the time. It was everywhere, and every place I went to, everyone said, oh, have some gin. And again, not really particularly my drink of choice, but gin and tonic is very nice. But it was so funny that at that time, and obviously Edinburgh gin, it was everywhere.
Yeah, really. And it's funny, whiskey national drink of Scotland, gin national drink of England. So it's a nice sort of blending, really, there. This is more of a difficult one. Tunnocks tea cake or Tunnocks caramel wafers?
Tunnocks caramel wafers. Nah, easy.
Really?
Easy. Yeah.
I thought it was going to be more difficult there.
Nope. Easy. Tunnocks caramel wafers like that. Yeah.
Last question: haggis, neeps and tatties, or mince and tatties?
Oh, that's a tricky one. Yeah. Except I love mince and tatties, but no, haggis, neeps and tatties. I absolutely love haggis. I really love it.
I really love it.
And again, you don't ever want to explain to anyone, I just always say to them, just take the wool off. That's it. And then
I usually describe it as slightly spicy mince, to sort of say
that's a very good way. That's probably a little more savory than me saying, just take the wool off.
Yeah. Put a lighter under it for a couple of minutes, and then put it on the plate, and then you're good to go.
That's it. And I do, and again, I love it, coming to Edinburgh and having it at breakfast. That's another thing. People go, "You what?" And I go, "Yeah, it's like, for me, that's part of the, full Scottish breakfast."
Yeah, that and black pudding.
But yeah, exactly. So I love haggis, and then also with a wee kind of dram sprinkled over it as well.
I like a nice whiskey sauce on it as well.
Yeah, perfect. There we are. So forget the pint now. You're getting me the whiskey, and you're getting me the haggis.
I will happily buy your whiskey and haggis dinner. Ross, thank you so much. This has been absolutely incredible for joining us and being the first guest. Thank you. I'm overwhelmed with gratitude. Thank you so much.
Not at all, Tony. My absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me as the first guest. And, if people are watching this for the first time, get on there. The Broonfords, it's great. I love it. I'm watching all your stuff on YouTube. So congratulations to you guys.
So once again, Ross, thank you so much. Keep yourself safe over there. I hope everyone is safe and healthy. And thank you so much for joining us.
Cheers, Tony.
So there you have it, guys. Ross King joining us to give us his Scottish memories and hints and tips for if you are ever thinking about coming over to Scotland and Edinburgh. I hope you're all safe out there, wherever you are. If you haven't already, please remember to like, comment and subscribe. Until next time, bye humans.